Welcome to the Cruise Retreat Podcast. My name is Rita M. Perez, and I'm a triple certified travel advisor. But more importantly, I coordinate all the logistics to bring your online community offline through world travel. If you've been yearning to put together a group trip, but overwhelmed with all the details that come with planning, I and this podcast are here to help. Ready to transform lives on the open waters of the world? Let's get started. Oh, hello everyone. Welcome back. If you don't know me, my name is Rita M. Perez, and I am a certified travel advisor who specializes in retreats on cruise ships. So this week's topic of discussion is about how much will putting on a cruise retreat actually cost me. It's kind of like come up in a couple of different conversations, so I think it's important for me to put out real numbers out there, so at least you have a starting base point to see if this is even feasible for you. And even before we kind of like break down what a retreat might cost, I think we just need to get out numbers of what cruising costs right now and the different types of cruising. So there are, and I've discussed this a little bit before, there's different types of brands, there's different types of styles of cruising, and that's why when people say, oh, I don't know if I would like cruising, I'm like, you just have to find the right cruise line, the right cruise ship, because everything is different, even amongst the different lines. Like, I recently sailed on the Liberty of the Seas with Royal Caribbean. Didn't like that ship, but I really love their Oasis and Quantum class ships, which are their newer ships and their larger ships. And funny enough, I also like their smaller ships, like the Brilliance of the Seas. I really appreciate for that small ship feel, and it has just the right amount of things that you need on the ship. So, that's a little bit of how things are just so different, even amongst one cruise line. And even on one ship, things are different, because on the bigger ships, if we're going to be just diving real deep into Royal Caribbean, they have different suite level classes that are available. And this is very similar to Norwegian Cruise Line that has like a private, just suite only area, which means they also have like a private pool type area. Virgin Voyages has a similar feel as well, where you kind of have like this small ship within a ship. Like you want the small ship feel and private amenities, but you still want all the benefits of being on a large ship, which means a lot of these like awesome shows and entertainment that you typically don't get on a small ship because they don't have the space for that to happen. So many variables. So if we are talking about, and typically retreats are 3 or 4 nights, they may be 5 nights, and it could be longer. There's so many different cruise types, but if we're talking specifically about retreats being a 3 or 4 nighter here from the States, I am going to say that you want to budget maybe like $150 to $200 a night for a cabin, which means for a 3-nighter, that would be $600 a cabin. However, and like I'm just putting out numbers, that's a mass market number. That is not like a premium or luxury brand. That's a mass market, which is like a Norwegian or a Royal Caribbean. So that number is also based on how much one of your attendees is going to be paying to get themselves on. That does not include if you wanted to add a registration fee or anything like that. That is purely the price to get on the ship. But once they are on the ship, that includes all of their meals, which is a huge land retreat expense that you have to buffer in. So like, let's say your land retreat typically is going to be a $500 registration. You probably can reduce that maybe by half, like to $250 of registration, because you don't have all those extra expenses that you're having to pull cash out from. And I'm just pulling out some numbers that it's really going to be beneficial if you're really interested, if we really dive deep together in some sort of a call. So if you're interested, I do have in the link in my bio and the link in show notes, a link to go ahead to my calendar so that we can go ahead and schedule some time together. But so with that cruise fare, so we're going off like $600 balcony cabin, because, you know, we want the balcony cabin. We want that fresh open air coming to us. 3 nights. That includes their cabin. That includes their food and basic beverages. That includes the activities and entertainment. And again, depending on which line you're sailing on, there are going to be other things out of pocket, but that includes like 3 big expenses that are typically, that are usual for planning a retreat. So when we're thinking of you as the retreat planner, like how much is this going to cost you? So you're not going to be paying for everybody to attend, unless you are an employer bringing your team on board with you because it's a team building retreat. That's a different story. But if we're specifically talking about coaches and community leaders bringing people on board, really the only expenses that you have to figure out are your cruise expenses, any travel expenses. So if you need to fly in, need to stay a night pre-hotel. Maybe you want to do a pre-hotel program and then everybody boards together. So those are expenses that you need to figure in. And then the other big expenses are going to be audio visual on board, because meeting space doesn't cost anything on a cruise ship. Woo! That is part of like one of the biggest perks is that when you are landside, you not only have to pay for those things that I just mentioned, your hotel, all your travel fees, but you also have to pay to rent out meeting space. And you don't have to do that on a ship, which big winner, which is why I'm a huge proponent of having retreats on cruise ships. The other big expense that is typically included is your food and beverage, which I just said, you don't have to worry about that either. So what other expenses? So when we're talking about audio visual, all those things are there. So sometimes I know different companies, depending on who you're going with landside, you have to rent the microphone. You have to rent the podium. You might have to like rent pipe and drape for the room just to give it a more branded feel. You don't need to worry about, and first of all, like there's no pipe and drape because the spaces that you get to use on board are so well appointed that you don't need pipe and drape. That's why I say like, you need to get out of the boring beige walls that we're used to in conference centers and get out to these beautiful lounges and theaters that you can utilize on ships. And this is specifically with ocean ships because river ships have other different benefits to them. So if you are needing to have somebody with you all the time, like an HVAC, I always mess those up. If you need to have an audio visual tech with you all the time, meaning you need somebody to like change up the lighting for you at different like points in your presentation, or if you want to have like different music streaming here or there, you can pay for a tech to be there with you the whole time, or you can pay a tech to be there only part of the time. Now, on average, I'd say it costs between $75 to $150 per tech per hour. And that's like that's it. So depending on how complex or how simple, because you can do a retreat without needing a tech. So again, it depends on what your goals are for hosting the retreat and what you want to accomplish. I know for my team leaders, they really want to go big. So they want to have more of these things included. If you're bringing about like 20 of your community members or 20 of your clients and furthering a transformation at sea or on a river, you probably won't need to have that in depth of tech involved. Like maybe you just need to have your laptop plugged in. And so you might have just the setup fee for the initial, making sure that everything's working. And that's really it. The other expenses that I would account for is all the surprise and delight opportunities, which there are different opportunities on the ship that you can take advantage of that aren't going to cost you too much out of pocket. And when I say that, there's things like this ship might be providing onboard wine tastings. And depending on the line that you're going on, there may be a fee, there may not be a fee, but you don't have to worry about collecting that fee. Your attendees will be paying that fee directly to the cruise line or to the cruise ship that you're on. So I think, let me know if you have any questions on this, because I think this might have helped like break down a lot of barriers. So I've given you like some basic pricing for a 3-nighter mass market cruise. If we are talking a more premium luxury like Virgin Voyages, which Virgin Voyages has more inclusions. And that's why, again, it's so important to determine your goal, because if you're just like going for basic level items, then sure, go ahead, go with a mass market option. If you want to have more things included, a better caliber of the things that are included, then you want to go with something that's a little bit more premium and luxury. And I say that especially if food and beverage is something that is very, very important to you and making sure that you are like wining and dining your people, you need to go with a premium or a luxury line. The mass markets, wow, I could have like a whole discussion on just like budget since I worked in the food and beverage world and in the theme park industry for so long. It's just everything is basic. And that includes the ingredients, the type of ingredients that they use, menu items, and all that. So if you're wanting to have a more elevated feel, I loved being on Virgin Voyages. Virgin Voyages is a higher price tag because everything's included all up front with you. And you have so many different specialty dining options to choose from that are included instead of like on a mass market specialty dining you have to pay separately for, which is a really good opportunity to do like a private dining experience, but it will cost you extra. So this is something that you can build into your retreat fee, or this is something that you just pick one of the luxury lines and you don't have to worry about adding a retreat fee because it's already included. So Virgin Voyages, I'm going to say for a for a terrace cabin. They don't call them balcony cabins on Virgin Voyages. For a 4 or 5 night cruise, I would say that is going to be close to $2,000 a person. And that's another major distinguisher between land retreats and cruise retreats, in that when someone pays for their cabin, a cabin is based on 2 people. If you don't have 2 people, there is a single supplement. It's not my favorite thing. That's probably one of my least favorite things about cruising, but that's just the way it is. Where on land, if the rate for the hotel is $250 a night, that is what the rate of the hotel is. They don't care how many people are in there. So that is the other thing. Like regardless, for a cruise ship cabin, if there's 1 or 2 people, because there's a different set of rules if there's 3 or 4 people in a cabin, which I don't know if you'd really want to have that many people in a cabin, especially on a retreat of this, maybe 3 people, but I would say that's probably the max. But it's priced out based on 2 people in the cabin at least. And if there's not 2 people, you get charged a single. So you get charged like 2 people, which is the biggest bummer. But it is also a really great opportunity to learn about other people that are in your industry and get to know other people and build bonds and relationships with people that you may not have known before. So it's the catch-22. So yes, I would say that it's about $2,000 for a 4 to 5 night cruise in a sea terrace. Now, Virgin Voyages, on their sea terraces, which are balcony cabins, they have hammocks. And so that's just one of the perks, but on top of them having hammocks, they just have out of this world entertainment. They have amazing crew members, and their food was delicious. And you can tell that they use top quality ingredients, and they are so mindful, especially if you have people with special dietary needs, meaning gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, vegetarian. Their menus are already built with some of those factors in mind so that people know what is safe for them, what is not safe for them, which I have not been seeing when I go on my recent mass market cruises, which is very disappointing in a sense for somebody who is gluten-free, but that's just the way it. Now, can they modify the menu to be gluten-free? So if I pick X pasta, can they make it gluten-free for me? Yes, they can. But I feel kind of like that the anticipation of names is what's lacking on the mass market cruises. So I hope this paints a picture. So those are ocean cruises. Now let's go to river cruising. River cruising is an ultra premium product, a very luxury product. And there are even more inclusions, because one of the big things that like the premium ocean lines don't do, the upper luxury lines do, but the premium lines don't do, is include excursions. And that's where river cruise lines come in, because they do include excursions. And I'm going to shout out one of my favorite partners, AMA Waterways. They include multiple excursions and multiple different types of excursions. Now, river cruising with my pals at AMA Waterways usually is minimum 7-night cruises. It can go on to longer. They have a 7-river cruise, which that is many weeks. I think that's a couple of months, but it's incredible. You get to sail 7 rivers during Europe. But if we're talking about some of the rivers that I have recently sailed on, 7 nights in a comfortable twin balcony. So they have different categories of staterooms. There's no interiors. There are some river views, but I would kind of like skip those. My favorite cabins, other than the suites, are going to be like the twin balcony cabins and then the French balcony cabin. And I've actually sailed in both of those types. And that is going to be, depending on when you're sailing and where you're sailing to, I'd say on average $4,000 per person. And this includes all the different retreat options. This includes alcohol during lunch and dinner and sparkling wines for breakfast. That is not something that's included like in a Virgin Voyages unless you pay for a bar tab. See, there are so many different factors and I feel like I'm maybe overloading you, so please let me know. But with a river cruise line, so you have your amazing cabin, you have the services of a cruise manager, you have the services of a wellness manager. So any of your wellness classes are going to be included. You have options to utilize bikes when you're in places like Europe. So if you would rather skip one of the tours, you can go ahead and bike around the local town yourself. They bring onboard entertainment from the local area. And that's one of the other things that I really love, is that depending on where you're sailing, you get local culture on board with you. So it's really that full immersive experience. Also, the menus change depending on where you are. So my last river cruise was through France. So of course, everything's going to be like French inspired. So escargot and beef bourguignon and all the deliciousness. The wines are tailored to the regions that we're sailing through. So Beaujolais wines we had one night. But if we're sailing multi-country, which I was on the Rhine last summer, and then my first ever river cruise is on the Danube, I remember I always mess this up. Hungary. We started in Budapest, and I always mess up the name of it. There is a stew very particular to Hungary. And we had that stew when we were in Hungary. And then as you go up, you get some Austrian delights. And then as you go further up on your sailing, you get the delights from Germany, which pretzels, beer, sausages, schnitzel, all the good stuff. So, and that's just not something that happens really on ocean ships unless you're on a higher end line. But as you can see, the higher up you go, the more inclusions that you have. And I know some people may think that, well, I can only afford X amount, but once you start adding in all the other things, it's kind of like you're paying for a premium cruise anyways. So, all right. So I've given you some numbers as to how much cruises cost and how much your onboard expenses might be, and hinted a little bit at some sort of registration fee that you might want to charge your people to help offset your costs. Offset your costs for one, but there are different perks that you can get as the group leader depending on what's important to you. So is it important to you to be able to travel for free? Is it important for you to have a photographer with you on board so that they can capture everything? Is it important for you, maybe you don't want to make money, but you want to help a charity or a foundation that's really close and near and dear to your heart. You want to help them raise money. There's so many different ways that it can be a revenue generating cruise experience for you. So it's not only something where you can do teaching if you want to do teaching, you can also do this without teaching. It's just like a fun getaway with each other. There's just so many different avenues, but I think I've word vomited enough. It's just clearly I'm very excited about hosting retreats on cruise ships. So if this has intrigued you at all, please go ahead, reach out to me either via email, read@readadventures.net, or check out my link to schedule so that we can hop on a call and just talk about some of your ideas and see if it's feasible and see what your timing is like to see if we can move forward with this or just need to put a pause in the future. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. You have an amazing week and I will see you next time. Bye. Thanks for joining me on the Cruise Retreat podcast. Please subscribe and leave the show a rating so more team and community leaders like yourself can get access to these episodes. See you next week.